Welcome everybody, my name is Lida Liberopoulou and this is the third and final video of a series about the real-world historical elements in Fallout New Vegas' Caesar's Legion. In the first video, we identified the similarities between Caesar's Legion and the Roman Empire. In the second, we saw that if we go beyond these superficial similarities, the Legion's ideology and methods are significantly different from those of the Roman Empire. Now, it's time to talk about why the Legion is so different from the Roman Empire. As always, there are going to be some major spoilers. You have been warned. Okay, let's go. So, let's recap what we learned so far. Besides the very obvious things like Latin names and terminology, military ranks, symbols, gear, and some other stuff related to their outward appearance, the Legion does have some ideological similarities with the Roman Empire. Number 1. Brutality. Violence and brutality were the norm for all ancient civilizations. But the Romans differed in their efficiency and relentlessness. If they marked someone or something for termination, they would not stop or even negotiate until the job was done. The Legion follows this to the letter, and they make this clear immediately when you first meet them in Nipton. Number 2, a highly militarized autocracy. Obviously, Rome didn't become an empire by asking politely its neighbors if they wanted to be conquered. They were highly militarized from their first days until the end. Military service was an essential part of being a citizen, and even the most powerful of its emperors were expected to lead military campaigns in person. Number 3. Effectively integrating conquered cultures. The Roman Empire was incredibly successful at integrating conquered populations. In fact, we can still see around us the effect of this, in architecture, art and law, the names of people and locations, and even an entire alphabet and a group of languages. Number 4. Dedicating its citizens to the idea of Rome itself. Romans had an entire list of virtues that a proper Roman had to adhere to, and all of them were supposed to represent the Via Romana, the Roman way which allowed Rome to conquer the world. But if you scratch the surface, some very clear differences start to appear. In the second video of the series, when I asked Caesar to describe his version of Pax Romana, he said this.
It means a nationalist, imperialist, totalitarian, homogeneous culture that obliterates the identity of every group it conquers. Long-term stability at all costs. The individual has no value beyond his utility to the state, whether as an instrument of war or production.
Almost none of what he says there applies to the real-world Pax Romana. Modern concepts like nationalism and totalitarianism don't apply to the ancient world, and the Romans didn't obliterate the identity of every group they conquered. In fact, one of the biggest strengths of the Roman Empire was its ability to tolerate and incorporate outside cultural elements into its own culture. They also allowed the people they conquered to retain large parts of their identity while at the same time adapting to the Roman way of life. And of course, Romans were one of the first civilizations to extend citizenship with its legal rights to the peoples of their empire. And unlike the Legion's aversion to technology and advanced medicine, the Romans made sure that they used every technological advancement both in battle and everyday life. They also had significant breakthroughs in medicine and allowed the use of drugs. Okay, so it looks like Caesar created the Legion by cherry-picking parts of the ideology and methods of the Roman Empire. But why? Why ignore some of its more powerful characteristics or even oversimplify them? To find out, we first need to have one last chat with Caesar. Right, so let's do this. Hope it goes okay this time. Okay, and we're back. Good. Oh no. I forgot to disable the mods. Alright, fuck. Oh, Benny. Oh my god. You know what? I'm gonna do this. Let's do this. How did you get Tabitha's wig and glasses, Caesar? You know what? Never mind. So since forming the Legion, all you've done is conquer other tribes?
That's right. Decades of warfare, absorbing lesser tribes, gathering power, forging the dross into a vast, razor-sharp scythe. My legion's expansion has never ceased. Much of the Utah and Colorado and all of Arizona and New Mexico are mine. We have cities of our own, but nothing compared to Vegas. Finally, my legion will have its Rome.
This doesn't sound obsessive and megalomaniacal at all. You destroyed the NCR because you hate its inefficiencies?
No. I'll destroy it because it's inevitable that it be destroyed. It's Hegelian dialectics, not personal animosity.
Don't you mean Fichte's dialectics? Whatever. Hegelian dialectics? What are those?
How do I put this basically enough? It's a philosophical theory, the kind you might encounter if you took time to read some books. The fundamental premise is to envision history as a sequence of dialectical conflicts. Each dialectic begins with a proposition, a thesis, which inherently contains or creates its opposite, an antithesis. Thesis and antithesis. The conflict is inevitable, but the resolution of the conflict yields something new, a synthesis, eliminating the flaws in each, leaving behind common elements and ideas.
You know that you're not the only one who read the Phenomenology of Spirit, right? So what's dialectic about you and the NCR?
The bombs wiped the slate clean. Human civilization descended to a level of ignorance that effectively set our cultural progress back to zero. The NCR has all the problems of the ancient Roman Republic: extreme bureaucracy, corruption, extensive senatorial infighting. Just as with the ancient Republic, it is natural that a military force should conquer and transform the NCR into a military dictatorship. Thesis and antithesis. The Colorado River is my Rubicon. The NCR Council will be eradicated, but the new synthesis will change the Legion as well, from a basically nomadic army to a standing military force that protects its citizens and the power of its dictator.
So, Caesar wants New Vegas to be his Rome? His campaign against the tribes of the Waste, the equivalent of Julius Caesar's Gaul campaign, and the crossing of the Colorado River his Rubicon. He also considers the NCR as a modern version of the corrupted late Roman Republic. He also mentions Hegelian dialectics and how conquering the NCR and combining its culture with his interpretation of the Roman Empire will allow for a synthesis which will cleanse them from all the corruption and bureaucracy and create a highly efficient military dictatorship that will protect its citizens and his power. But for me, the most interesting part is this. He claims that the NCR is a foe he is ideologically opposed to, and that this is not some sort of personal animosity. But although the part about the ideology is more or less true, all his actions and the language he uses show that this is a very personal thing for him. After all, NCR's inability to effectively protect its citizens is what killed his father.
My family lived not far from the Great Boneyard. After raiders killed my father, my mother sought the followers' protection. I was 2 years old.
He claims that the whole Legion project is supposed to be a more efficient and effective answer to rebuilding a civilization than the recreation of the world as it was the moment the bombs dropped. And when it comes to the post-nuclear wastes, his brutal methods are far more effective, just as Rome's brutality, discipline, single-mindedness, and determination were effective against the Celtic and Germanic tribes. But it took Rome more than 200 years just to conquer and Romanize the Italian peninsula. And as I have already explained, Rome was much more than its brutality, discipline, single-mindedness, and determination. Because you need far more than that to produce an advanced, stable, and viable society, and to be able to confront and eventually incorporate into your culture other more advanced societies. If Caesar was even half the scholar of Roman history he claims to be, he should know that. But he seems fixated on role-playing a weird North American version of the Roman conquest of Italy, the Punic Wars, Julius Caesar's conquest of Gaul and civil war, and even hints of Mohammed II's conquest of the Byzantine Empire, all condensed in a single lifetime. This is why the Legion has almost none of Rome's benign elements, although they are essential for making it a true, long-lasting, standalone imperial power. They don't immediately serve his true goal, which is the conquest of the NCR and the reshaping it under his guidance and terms. Also, by attacking them so early in the Legion history, he's risking destroying his entire bringing the torch of civilization to the Waste project, because again, his actions show that his motives don't really go beyond his personal ambition and old grievances. So far I have been speaking about the Legion and Caesar as they appear in the game, but obviously both are the result of the design decisions of the game's creators. And it seems that the Legion's adoption of the more brutal and autocratic aspects of the Roman Empire is an intentional design choice and not the result of misinterpreting Roman history. Josh Sawyer pretty much outright says it in a 2012 post on the Something Awful forum. I put the full text on the screen, but the main point is the phrase at the end. Caesar's Legion isn't the Roman Empire or the Roman Republic. It isn't even the Roman Legion. It's a slave army with trappings of foreign conscripted Roman legionaries during the late Empire. All military, no civilian, and with none of the supporting civilian culture. Josh Sawyer also makes very clear that the Legion being so brutal and extreme in its approach to war was also intentional and aimed at confronting the player with some not so comfortable ideas. I don't think Caesar and the Legion need to be thought as grey like the player's other options. I think they can be what they are as they are, because the lie of their fiction is intended to provoke thoughts about truth, i.e. the nature of humans who rise to power in such circumstances. When we say war never changes, we are talking about things like this. Also, based on the information from the Legion's restored cut content and the designer's comments and interviews, it seems that the original plan was to offer the player even more information and options that had to do with the Legion-occupied territories. The aim was to make the player understand why the Legion was so successful in conquering the Wastes, and that the relative safety and trouble-free everyday life it offered to its subjects could be more alluring than the uncertainty of NCR's rule. Also, the Legion was not going to last for long. Chris Avalon in an interview said the following: "I always felt that Caesar's goals were going to die once he ran out of lands to conquer. He had a war machine, and once it stopped rolling, the other societal problems his faction had at their core would surface and they would tear themselves apart, or simply decay until they became the prey of someone else." This idea is hinted at the dialogue of Vulpes when he talks about Lanius not needing his service if he becomes head of the Legion.
Lanius served Caesar well as his greatest battlefield commander. With Lanius at the head of the Legion, however, I doubt he'll have much use for my services. He prefers direct methods.
Also, that is what Mr. House predicts about the Legion. He will mention it if you talk with him about Caesar's death.
Given a year, they'd have him deified. But by then, the Legion will be breaking down, riven by internal conflicts, a monster consuming itself. It's irrelevant. In the short term, the Legion is still monster enough that defeating it will make me look powerful indeed.
Because of my love of history, I always found the Legion fascinating, and it's a bit disappointing that this faction is too one-note and less nuanced than it could be. I'm aware that the Legion's design and implementation was one of the many aspects of Fallout New Vegas that was affected by the game's very short development cycle. And yes, the restored content adds a bit more nuance and depth, and the design team has mentioned that they aim to add even more information about life under the Legion to make the player have a better understanding of why the people of the Wasteland would prefer it over the NCR. But even these additions don't change the fact that the entire Legion project has no real depth and is just a vehicle for the ambitions of one man. To be fair, the design choice of making the Legion a far more brutal and simplistic imitation of the Roman Empire makes sense in the context and settings of the events of Fallout New Vegas. But I think what we ended up with is a missed opportunity in creating a faction that could have had a long-lasting effect on Fallout's landscape. For the last part, I'm going to play a bit of a game of what if. Since Obsidian was acquired by Microsoft, we have seen the Fallout New Vegas 2 scenarios reappear. Personally, I don't think that this will happen, and even if it does, based on how remakes and sequels usually end up, I'm not sure if I would be very enthusiastic about it. Fallout New Vegas was lightning in a bottle, and I don't think it can be repeated. But it's always fun to speculate, so in the case of a sequel, obviously I would like to see the Legion again. Only this time after their defeat in the Battle of Hoover Dam, which based on the fact that 3 out of the 4 end scenarios result in the Legion's defeat, this is the more probable canonical scenario, they decide to remain in their territory and work there on creating a new Rome. Caesar is gone, and maybe after a short period of a civil war mirroring the Antony versus Octavian conflict, maybe with Vulpes versus Lanius, the Legion has now a new leader. It might be Vulpes or some other character from the Legion's conquered territories. And this new leader is using the Roman method. Legionaries can obtain citizenship in land, the victorious centurions get triumphs and can retire in their villa in Sedona or Aspen. Any settlement or tribe in Legion territory can obtain privileges if they decide to assimilate, slaves can obtain their freedom and even become citizens, and they have embraced technology and advanced medicine. And after many years of consolidating and building their power, they decide to expand again. They are as brutal and genocidal as ever, only this time they are also far more methodical and nuanced, and with far better knowledge of the historical precedents. I don't know. To me, this version of the Legion sounds far more interesting and dangerous. Pity we will never get to see it. Thank you for watching. This Fallout New Vegas series has been real fun for me to make. I might do another video in the future with some historical details about Caesar and the Legion structure, but for now I plan to take a break from New Vegas. My channel focuses on history in video games, so please subscribe, because where else can you learn that the stick with a sponge you find in the public toilets in the Forgotten City was called a tersorium? Well, here, that is where you're going to learn this stuff. You can also check out my previous videos and my archaeological reconstructions in VR project. I've put the links on the screen. And for now, ave atque vale.